The day I moved into my new dorm, I thought my biggest problem would be passing my first-year classes. I was wrong. Nothing could have prepared me for the 3 dangerously hot men I was about to live with, and how my quiet life was about to turn upside down. My name's Felix, I'm 21, and I just got accepted into one of the top universities in the country to study medicine. Everyone keeps telling me it's a big deal, but right now, all I can think about is how I'm going to survive the next 4 years without losing my mind. The morning I was leaving for campus, my mom was in the kitchen making my favorite breakfast, fluffy pancakes with crispy bacon and scrambled eggs. The smell filled the whole house, and I swear my stomach growled loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Your food is ready," Mom said, placing the plate in front of me like she was serving royalty. I grinned and took a bite. "Thanks, Mom. You know you're spoiling me, right?" "That's the point," she smiled, then out of nowhere pulled me into one of her famous tight hugs. "Mom, I need air." I laughed, my fork still in hand. She kissed my cheek. "I'm going to miss you, Felix. Promise me you'll focus on your studies, okay? No bad company." Before I could answer, Dad's voice echoed from the front door. "Felix, let's go before traffic hits." I grabbed my backpack, double-checked my phone charger, and followed her out. Dad was already by the car, leaning on it with his usual serious dad face. The drive to campus took about 30 minutes, and most of it was quiet except for the local radio playing some 80s rock songs. When we pulled up in front of the university's main gate, I stared at the massive campus buildings and felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Dad reached into his wallet and handed me a few crisp bills. "Take care of yourself, son. And remember, be careful who you hang out with. College is different." "Yes, sir," I said with a small smile. He gave me a firm pat on the back before getting into the car. I stood there for a moment, watching him drive away, the morning breeze ruffling my hair. I unfolded the campus map I had printed last night and traced the path to my assigned dorm. My suitcase wheels clicked against the pavement as I walked, passing groups of laughing students and people throwing frisbees on the lawn. Finding the dorm wasn't as hard as I thought. It was a tall, modern building with glass doors and students coming in and out like ants in a busy colony. I dragged my suitcase inside, followed the hallway numbers, and finally stopped at room 307. My heart was thumping, partly from the walk and partly from the nervous excitement of meeting whoever I'd be living with. I pushed the door open and froze. Standing inside were 3 of the most ridiculously good-looking men I had ever seen in my life. The first guy, standing closest to the door, looked like he had walked straight out of a fitness magazine. Tall, broad shoulders, toned muscles that flexed every time he moved. His t-shirt clung to him in a way that made me think he probably was a fitness coach. He had a sharp jawline and his hair was perfectly styled. His name is Ken. Next to him, leaning casually against a desk, was another guy with a presence that screamed money. Perfectly groomed dark hair, smooth skin, and the kind of smile you'd see on a billboard selling expensive watches. His shirt looked like it cost more than my entire wardrobe. Even the way he stood was elegant, almost royal. That was James. But then, my eyes shifted to the far end of the room. And that's when my heart did something weird. The third guy was sitting quietly on his bed, his back slightly against the wall, flipping through a book. He looked up slowly and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. He was tall, perfect posture, a calmness in his expression that somehow made him stand out more than the others. But it was his eyes, those deep almond-shaped eyes that seemed to hold a secret and a promise at the same time. They were seductive, magnetic, like if you stared too long you'd never want to look away. That was Andrew. He didn't say anything, just held my gaze for a second too long, and I swear my chest tightened. I stood there like a statue at the doorway, suitcase still in hand, my mouth slightly open. Finally, I gulped, forced a small smile, and greeted. "Welcome to room 307. Ken was the first to step forward. His smile warm and easy, the kind that made you feel like you'd known him for years. He reached out his hand. "You must be the new guy. Felix, right?" "Yeah," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, and for some reason my palm felt hotter than normal. "Well, welcome," Ken said, looking me up and down in a way that sent shivers down my spine. "You're kind of cute, you know that?" I blinked. "Thank you." From the corner of the room, James let out a laugh. strolling over with that casual confidence like he owned the place. His eyes dropped to the small laundry bag hanging from my suitcase, and I realized too late that the top of my pajama pants was sticking out. They were light pink with little ginger cats on them. James grinned wickedly. "Wait, hold on, are those your pants?" My ears burned. He pointed and Ken leaned over to look. "Oh my God, they're so cute." James laughed harder, shaking his head. "Dude, who wears those?" I swallowed, wishing the floor would just open up and swallow me whole. "They were a gift from my mom," I said in defense. For some reason that made them laugh even more. Ken chuckled and gave me a playful pat on the shoulder. "Relax, we're just messing with you. But seriously, those are something else." The sound of their laughter filled the room, but at the far end, Andrew didn't even glance our way. He stayed on his bed, book in hand, completely still, like we were invisible. The sunlight from the window caught the side of his face, making him look almost unreal, and yet, he didn't seem to care that I was there at all. Part of me was embarrassed. Another part couldn't stop wondering about him. By the time I had unpacked my clothes, arranged my books on the small shelf, and tried to make my bed look at least somewhat neat, the sun was already starting to set. The room had gone strangely quiet. Ken, James, and even Andrew had gone out. I didn't know where, but judging from the way they looked, like guys who belonged in a magazine ad for luxury living, I guessed it was somewhere nice. I still hadn't said hi to Andrew properly. He hadn't even looked in my direction for more than a second since I arrived. A part of me started wondering if maybe he wasn't comfortable with me moving in. Maybe he liked having just Ken and James around and thought I was going to mess up their space. The thought made my stomach twist a little. Speaking of stomach, mine growled loudly. I reached into my bag and pulled out the one thing I knew I could handle, a pack of instant noodles. With no one else around, I boiled some water, threw in the noodles, and added the seasoning. It wasn't exactly gourmet, but right now it felt like heaven. Sitting on my bed with the steaming bowl, I took the first bite and sighed. "Well, Felix," I muttered to myself, "this might just be your life now, noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner." I looked around the room at the perfectly arranged desks, stylish jackets hanging on chairs, and colognes lined neatly on the dresser. "Yeah," I whispered, "these three hot guys don't look like they can even boil water. Maybe they went out to get their fancy dinner while I'm here eating this." I slurped another bite, shook my head, and smiled to myself. After finishing my noodles, I spent the next couple of hours reading a medical book I had brought from home. I figured it wouldn't hurt to get my brain warmed up before lectures started tomorrow. By 9:30 p.m., my eyes were starting to feel heavy. I set the book aside, brushed my teeth, and climbed into bed. The room was still quiet. Ken, James, and Andrew hadn't returned yet. I glanced at the clock, 10 p.m., and that was when the door swung open. My heart jumped into my throat. For a split second, I thought they were burglars. But then I heard James' voice, loud and full of energy. "That was fun," he said between laughs. "I swear that party was way better than last year's." "Yeah," Ken replied, his voice a little deeper and more relaxed. "The birthday cake alone was worth it." Birthday party, of course. I rolled onto my side, keeping my breathing slow, pretending to be asleep. The last thing I wanted was to get dragged into some conversation about people I didn't know. And then, it happened. Andrew spoke. It was the first time I'd ever heard his voice. Calm, soothing, a bit deep but still incredibly sexy. The kind of voice that could make you lean in just to hear him better. "Let's just say," he murmured, "it was interesting." I froze, my hand gripping my pillow a little tighter. I closed my eyes even more firmly, afraid that if I peeked, I'd end up staring. Ken's voice broke through my thoughts. "Looks like our new baby got bored and slept off." James laughed. "Yeah, knocked out like a kid after recess." And then Andrew smirked. I didn't even have to see it. I could hear it in his voice when he said, "You're always a pain in the neck." The three of them chatted a bit more, their voices dipping into private jokes I couldn't catch. After a while, the sound of running water from the bathroom told me they were taking turns showering. Eventually, their voices faded, replaced by the soft hum of the heater. I lay there, still pretending to sleep, my mind racing, not about Ken or James, but about Andrew's voice. Only when the room felt still and the night wrapped itself around us did I finally let myself drift off for real. I must have fallen into a light sleep because the next thing I remember was the faint sound of close whispers. I kept my eyes shut at first, thinking maybe I was imagining it, but the voices grew clearer. "He's really out," James whispered, his tone playful. A warm sensation brushed against my cheek and I felt my heart skip. "His cheek is so soft," James murmured, almost amused. That's when I opened my eyes and nearly jumped. James and Ken were standing right beside my bed, leaning over me like I was some kind of rare discovery. "Why are you standing so close?" I asked, pulling my blanket up a little. Ken smiled, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "We were just thinking, maybe you could be our wife for the night." I sat up instantly. "What? No way. I don't want to be anyone's wife. I'm just 21. They burst out laughing. "A shy baby," Ken teased. James crouched down, his hand gently tilting my chin up. "That's the price you have to pay for coming to live with us," he said. My stomach tightened. I wasn't sure if they were serious or just playing around, but either way, I didn't like where this was going. "That's enough, guys." Andrew's deep voice cut in. His gaze cool but sharp enough to make both Ken and James back off instantly. Neither of them said anything as they moved away, chuckling under their breath. Andrew didn't look at me for long, just a glance, then he walked to his bed, picked up his book, and lay down as if nothing had happened. I stayed awake for hours after that, eyes half open, watching the shadows in the room. Only when I was sure everyone was asleep did I finally allow myself to close my eyes again. The next morning came faster than I wanted. I barely slept after what happened last night, but I forced myself up, got dressed, and made my way to my first lecture. It didn't take long before my lack of sleep started catching up with me. 10 minutes into the professor's talk about cell biology, my eyelids began to droop. I tried to fight it, but it was like my body had other plans. "Mr. Felix." My eyes snapped open. The entire class was staring at me. The professor's eyebrow was raised and his arms were crossed. "If you're that tired, you can go sleep outside." The students erupted in laughter. My face burned as I picked up my bag and walked out, trying to look unfazed. After that humiliation, I headed to Ben's dorm. He wasn't there, so I just collapsed on his bed and took a much-needed nap. By the time I woke up, the sun was setting and I decided to head back to my own dorm. When I walked in, I was surprised. Andrew was in the small kitchenette, stirring something in a pan. The smell hit me instantly. He glanced at me once, then back at the food. "You cook?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Without looking up, he replied in that calm, low voice, "Sometimes." I moved closer, curiosity winning over hesitation. When he was done, he plated some and slid it toward me. "Try it." I took a bite and my eyes widened. "Wow, this is really good." When I looked up to thank him, his almond eyes were on me, intense, steady, and almost dangerous. Like he was about to devour me, but not in the way that involved food. My chest tightened and I quickly looked away. Fast forward to later that night, I lay in bed smiling to myself. I'd actually had a conversation with Andrew and he'd even made me dinner. For once, I felt like maybe things were looking up. But that feeling didn't last long. Sometime after midnight, I felt something soft press against my lips. My eyes shot open and my heart nearly stopped. It was Andrew. He didn't give me time to react, didn't say much, just pulled back slightly, his lips curving into that subtle smirk. "Your lips taste like strawberry," he murmured, his voice deep and unhurried. Then, just as casually, he turned, walked to his bed, and got under the covers like nothing happened. I stayed frozen, my mind spinning. My hand touched my lips, still warm from the kiss. Sleep was out of the question now. All night, I kept thinking, should I keep living with these 3 hot guys, or find another dorm before things get even more complicated? The first thing I saw when I woke up that morning was Andrew. He was leaning casually against the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, hair slightly messy but somehow still perfect. The sunlight pouring in from the window made his sharp jawline look even more unreal. My instinct told me to avoid him. After last night's incident, the way he'd looked at me, the things he'd said, I didn't trust myself to be around him without turning into a flustered mess. So, I kept my head down, grabbed my cereal, and pretended to be extremely interested in the back of the milk carton. But it was like Andrew could smell my nervousness from across the room. "Morning, Felix," he said, voice dripping with that lazy charm. When I didn't immediately respond, he smirked. And throughout the day I think he was being flirty. I wasn't used to attention from someone like him, someone so confident, so effortlessly handsome. And honestly, I liked it, but not like this. By evening, I had other things to worry about, as that's the freshers' party. The rules were simple. Each fresher had to bring at least 3 guests. My only problem was that I only had Ben, my best friend and fellow fresher, which meant I needed 3 more people. The thought of asking my roommates made my skin prickle. I mean, what were the chances they'd even agree? Still, I didn't have much choice. The apartment was quiet when I stepped out of my room. The others were gone except Andrew. He was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Andrew?" I started, shifting my weight awkwardly. "Could you maybe tell the other guys there's a freshers party tonight? And if they're free, maybe they could, come with me?" He looked up, right into my eyes. I felt my throat tighten and I quickly looked away. Then, with that slow, deliberate way of speaking he had, Andrew asked, "And what do I get in return?" My heart skipped. "What do you want?" I asked before I could stop myself. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, eyes locked on mine. His lips curved into a smirk that made my skin feel too warm. "I want you, Felix," he said softly, "for the night." My brain short-circuited. Before I could even process his words, the door opened and Ken and James walked in laughing about something. Andrew leaned back like nothing happened and casually told them about the party. They exchanged a quick glance, then chuckled. "Why not?" Ken said. "Yeah, that's our specialty," James added, then smiled. Within minutes, they disappeared into their rooms to get dressed. I was left standing there, still trying to breathe normally, my heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. What exactly did Andrew mean by having me for the night? I left for the party before the guys. I didn't want to admit it, but I was nervous. It was my first real event as a university student, and I had no idea how wild it could get. By the time the clock hit 6 p.m. the music was loud, the lights were bright, and the whole place was alive. Then they came. Ken, James, and Andrew. They walked in like a scene straight out of a movie, tall, confident, and ridiculously good-looking. The second they stepped through the doors, the freshers' girls lost their minds. Screams erupted from every corner, and some girls were actually shouting that they wanted to marry them. I swear it was like watching a celebrity entrance. And then Andrew's eyes found mine. The moment he stepped up to me, the whole room went silent, like the DJ had accidentally unplugged the speakers. My heart was pounding in my ears, but I forced a smile. "I'm glad you guys came," I told them, trying to sound casual. "But I didn't expect you to, steal the show." They all burst out laughing and James grinned, leaning closer. "That's our specialty, showing up in grand style." The party kept going strong until 9 p.m., when the school reminded us we had lectures the next day. But before I could leave, someone shoved a drink into my hand, the dreaded Freshers' Challenge. I was supposed to drink it. I took the drink, knowing fully well that it was a bad idea. By the time I was done, the whole room was spinning. My steps felt heavy, my words slurred, and I'm pretty sure I laughed awkwardly at some point. The freshers teased me that I was weak. And then the next thing I knew, Andrew was crouching in front of me. "Come on," he said softly. And just like that, he carried me home. On his back. I don't remember much after that, except the steady rhythm of his footsteps and the warmth of him against me. By the time we got home, the other guys looked a little worried about leaving me with Andrew. I guess I wasn't hiding how drunk I was. "Don't worry," Andrew told them, his voice calm but firm. "I'll take care of him." They didn't argue, just nodded and disappeared into their rooms, leaving the quiet hum of the night around us. Andrew helped me into my bed, supporting me with one strong arm. I could feel his warmth against me and somehow, it made me feel safe. He sat me down on the bed and started taking off my shirt, then my shoes. He disappeared for a moment, came back with a small towel soaked in warm water, and began gently cleaning my face and neck. His touch was so careful, almost reverent, like I was something fragile. When he reached for my pants, I placed my hand over his, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, Andrew." He froze for a moment, his eyes meeting mine. Then, instead of pushing, he simply smiled, and then, he leaned down and kissed me. My heart jolted awake faster than my mind did, and before I knew it, I was kissing him back. Somewhere between that kiss and his arms lifting me off the bed, I realized I wasn't scared of anything anymore. Andrew carried me into the bathroom, the steam curling around us like it knew what was about to happen. The warmth of the water, his hands on my skin, his closeness, everything felt like it was exactly where it should be. That night we crossed a line, but it didn't feel wrong. From that day forward, Andrew and I became inseparable. He was the most romantic boyfriend I could ever imagine. He often bought me flowers, breakfast in bed, little notes slipped into my textbooks, even walking me to class when he didn't have one. I just kept falling for him. Looking back now, I can't help but laugh at how I thought living with 3 hot guys would be trouble. Turns out, it was the best decision I ever made. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more amazing BL stories. Thanks for watching.